This video is actually very interesting. It's like all the stuff I've been talking about, the Steam bestseller list, finally got wrapped up into a gift packaged with a bow on top and then delivered to the internet. Alinea Analytics claims that Sony has made over $1.2 billion on Steam via selling 43 million copies of PlayStation Studios games. Here's the top 5 PlayStation games on Steam by copies sold. They put a whole thing, full analysis and new free Substack, blah, 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 blah. Now, I know that Alinea Analytics has not shown us how they go ahead and attain their data. But if you're actually doubting as to these, games and whatever metrics they're putting out here, did you know that you can actually go ahead and verify the numbers, or at least analyze the numbers yourself using Valve's own metrics? It doesn't give you numbers, it gives you rankings, but from the rankings, you can find games within those categories and their sales, and you can estimate from there. I won't be surprised if some of their analysis actually does come from here, because Valve be throwing, data all over the place like it's free, almost, basically, right? So let's go back and revisit their claim and look at the numbers that they're showing. Then I'll go back to the Steam data set and I'll show you. But then I'm going to also show you and I would call this person an Xbox detractor at this point in time, and their very long missive as to how this is not really a big deal without them actually verifying the data. Because when I look at replies, the gaming ledger is constantly telling people that Alinea Analytics is not really a good source to follow. Okay, maybe they're not, maybe they are, but there's also something that lends credence to this reality. And ladies and gentlemen, you know why I'm happy about this Alinea Analytics data? It brings this particular data set to the forefront. Every time I show this data set to the biggest and most ardent Xbox detractors, they run away. So now they don't step in the mud, and that's the problem about data. It can be helpful or it can be dangerous. So what games are they talking about? They said Helldivers 2, 12.7 million units on Steam. Dang, that's crazy. I don't know if that's actually accurate. However, if I want to verify, I go over to the Steam Best of 2024 and I look very carefully at the rankings. In 2024, games like Power World, Space Marine 2, Warhammer 40,000, Elden Ring in its year 2, and Baldur's Gate 3, and Call of Duty, and Black Myth Wukong were in the top category, and these are single-player games. Notice how I actually carefully dodged some of these multiplayer and co-op games. And these games, like Black Myth Wukong, we know sold a significant number of units here, about 20+ million on Steam, because a lot of its sales were on, on Steam and were outside of the United States. So it was one of those games which had a very big following. It is an outlier. But then you look at a game like Baldur's Gate 3, which also was very, popular and also very, successful in sales. And you can also say that. But this game launched over the course of many years via early access and so on and so forth. And the game also sold on Good Old Games, because that was one of the first places, or I guess I would say one of the places that they actually did early access. So it was a unique game in its way, in its own right, and it did well. The developers also announced that Space Marine 40,000 had actually netted over 5 million units of sales and more. Now, it grew because their sales continued to grow after launch all the way down there, and Power World was a 25-ish million or so title. When you run all these numbers, it's not far off to say that Helldivers 2 was either at the 12 million mark or more, because you can easily go see these guys over here. And here's what Valve is doing with these numbers. They said the year's top games measured by gross revenue. What they do is this particular list you're seeing here, it randomizes. They're not ranking it based on the highest or the lowest. They just toss them all in a category based on a specific margin. So this is the platinum list. This is where all the big games usually go. In 2023, an Xbox game made its way into that platinum list as well. One that was heavily criticized, one that they swore was a bad game, one that they swore was underwhelming, that it was actually not a Starfield. Yeah, it did. But again, it's not something to go ahead and, brag much about, seeing as Baldur's Gate 3 made it into that list in 2023 and made it into that same list in 2024. So again, some games be doing the most. And with Steam, Baldur's Gate 3 was very, very popular. That being said, what's the other game? Horizon Zero Dawn. 4.5 million units. God of War. And this just, I think it throws all the God of Wars together. 4.2. Days Gone. 3.4. Spider-Man. 2.7 million units. Now, let's start with Spider-Man because I can track Spider-Man. Before they even brought this stuff out, I can simply just go back to when they launched Spider-Man on Steam, 2022. And we can see if Spider-Man makes its way into these bestseller lists, which will be some of the highest grossing games on Steam. 2022. Scroll down. Da, ba, da, ba, da. Look, it said Spider-Man. So what I said, oh my God, it's Spider-Man. There it is. Because the game actually did well. Now, here's the crazy thing. You keep scrolling to down the road. Is Horizon Zero Dawn, which launched 2 years prior to date, was already selling decently well and was also bringing in revenue for PlayStation. Steam was logging the data, and I was showing all of you that PlayStation is netting money on Steam. And Xbox, don't be sleeping on Xbox. This video is not about them, but if you've been paying attention, you see Flight Simulator, Age of Empires, and a few Xbox games here and there. Xbox has sustained entire studios with this kind of synergy, selling on Xbox and Xbox PC and then Steam. But this is going to give you a very clear picture as to why I think that those that are the detractors of this effort from PlayStation are wanting to engage in delusions by trying to dismiss Alinea Analytics, but they didn't see the second side. Days Gone. When did that launch? On PC? I don't know. Maybe 2019? No, was it 2020? Let's go to 2021. Let's see what Days Gone actually did. I have to go back because you have to go to the most recent, so 2021. What happened with Days Gone? Did it make its way as one of the top sellers here on Steam? Maybe, maybe not. If you notice, it's actually one of the lower, sales in that regard. But again, if Spider-Man made it there, then Days Gone should have made it there. Unless, of course, somewhere, somehow, Valve does not report it. And, we're basically over here just pounding sand, right? Bro, I had to pause the video to find it. This game is sneaky as heck. Do you see it here? It's been hiding. It's freaking in the 2021 list in the bronze category. And there it is right there, just hiding. I was like, bro, this stupid game wants to hide from me. I actually bought this version on Steam. And here it is again in this particular bestseller list. If it's even sold more than Spider-Man, there's a likelihood that it also shows up in separate years and not just in the 2021 best list, but maybe in the 2022. But it could not have appeared in the 2022 and just enjoyed long tail sales over those 3 or 4 years, and it's probably still enjoying long tail sales. That's something a lot of people aren't paying attention with these particular efforts. It's like this number is just a snapshot. It's continuing right now as we're speaking. The Steam Best of 2025 is going to be published in January of next year. So hopefully, God willing, within a few months, you're going to see these numbers actually come out, and everyone's going to be able to get a sense of what's going on. I just showed you Spider-Man in 2022. Now, Miles Morales itself, which also adds to the Spider-Man side, is, in a sense, one that you probably won't think about, but here it is in the best of 2023 in the bronze category as well, which pretty much tells you that these games have been grossing a lot of revenue for Steam. And this is just a 30% side, and Steam is pretty much heralding this stuff. Alinea Analytics, their data set is convincing to me in this particular regard, as this is a data set that I have long suspected, having access to Valve's own free and quite obvious data about games like God of War and all of the above, that these games have been selling decently well on here. I don't think Ragnarok sold as well. It was very interesting when it launched. There was Black Myth Wukong on the horizon. So when we looked at the Steam concurrent list, even though you shouldn't judge by that, it seemed quite close to, say, Final Fantasy, which it launched before. I think that game also put some sand in Final Fantasy's own food because it just competed with it for nothing. But the 2018 God of War, that game really did do well when it actually landed on Steam. I think it landed on Steam in 2020 or 2021. My guess, or was it 2019? I can't remember exactly. But, you know, by and large, you can go and you can check all these data sets out yourself. It's all here. It's all here. That satisfies that piece of the puzzle. However, when the Gaming Ledger gets a hold of this tweet, he writes this long missive that says, PlayStation's Steam chart looks impressive at first glance. 1.2 billion in gross revenue and 43 million copies sold across PlayStation Studios games. Now keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, if we whip out a calculator, PlayStation's efforts on PC, pay attention with me, ladies and gentlemen, PlayStation's efforts on PC have spanned right now about 5 years, if not less, in terms of some of their really big games. For instance, if I go ahead and click, maybe I find myself a PlayStation game, Horizon or whatever it is, Days Gone, and I go to PlayStation Studios, let's go with Spider-Man Miles Morales, and I go here to the PlayStation Publishing LLC page and look very carefully. The oldest title that was actually, or I will say more recently, they started throwing their games on a higher cadence in 2020. These are the big games. Everything else is much smaller. Everybody's Raptor Helldivers 2. So 2020 is Horizon Zero Dawn, all the way through currently 2025 and still going. And if LNE Analytics is claiming that they've sold or got a snapshot of 43 million copies, divide that by 5 years, let's give you 2025. That's 8 million units a year of software. 8 million units that the people who bought them likely, or a good number of people who bought them likely did not buy them on PlayStation. Some of you double dipped. I double dipped too. So if this is the case, I don't know how the Gaming Ledger can say that this looks impressive at first glance. It looks impressive on multiple glances. That's 43 million, and then you divide it at 8.6 million a year, and then you basically break it down at 1.2 billion in gross revenue. That's 3 points of the data that is impressive. And so you said, but once you actually separate optics from strategy, term of endearment that black people usually call each other, what is optics and strategy got to do with mathematics in this particular case? Like, bro, we got the numbers, like looking at us right here. We got the data and we're telling you, or it's telling us that, hey, this is what happened. Think about Ghost of Yote. That has sold about 3 million units of its own game in this 1 year that it's launched. How much more copies is it going to sell on PlayStation? But if it makes its way to Steam, it might just sell more copies, including all the other games that have been on Steam and are still selling at the moment. But I'll keep reading. Because again, like I said, this is very interesting. This is a very long missive. You said, the data actually reinforces why Sony may not be so eager to push deeper into PC with its first-party single-player titles. Huh? Okay. Somebody help me out. How do you sell a massive quantity of titles every year, on average, about 8 million units a year of PlayStation software, and it doesn't reinforce why you should actually do it more? I don't understand. So you mean to tell me when Capcom sold in total 10 million units of Monster Hunter Wilds, of which PC bought majority of those units, which is probably close to the cadence of 8 million units on PC alone, you mean to tell me that PlayStation probably replicating such unit sales would discourage them? If I didn't have the math on my side, I'd probably not ask you these questions as well. You said the graphic mixes two fundamentally different business models. Uh-oh. Live service games and cinematic single-player games. Wonderful. I'm glad you actually said that. They don't give a flip over here. They throw it all in the category in terms of gross revenue. This is what makes it even beautiful, because Steam makes the data agnostic to live service, single freaking player, or whatever the heck you want to call it. And that's where the data set has always been very interesting. Alinea Analytics, to their credit, posited it in terms of unit sales and in terms of Steam gross revenues generated by PS5 Studios games. Because it is actually reported, and this is how you know that their data has the fidelity, so far, for this case anyways, to have posited something that is strong. So I asked this gaming ledger dude, why not go and grapple with the data itself? You said gas games like Helldivers 2 thrive on PC for obvious reasons. It speaks to the taste of many PC gamers. It depends on skill, social networks, and community engagement. Hold on. So if we remove from this equation, you mean to tell me, Helldivers 2, let's go back and multiply this, right? Let's go 43 million and let's remove Helldivers 2, not divide. 43 minus 12.7. And then we divide by 5 years, right? Hold on, my math is not mathing. 43 minus 12.7. 30.3 divided by 5. That is still 6 million units every year. More units than Silent Hill 2 sold, which sold at 2.5 million units on multiple platforms. More units than Lost Soul Aside could have ever dreamed of selling. More units than many games sold. So if we even throw away gas, right? What are we going to see? We're going to see that this is actually still an impressive number. And guess what Alinea Analytics didn't even do? Right here, they don't even mention Destiny from Bungie. They only stuck with PlayStation Studios from the traditional sense as you've known them. But even in this Steam bestseller list, Destiny is still raking in cash, or was still at least as late as 2024, still raking in cash for PlayStation. Say it with me, in the platinum category. So if we remove the live service revenue and separate it, it's still a freaking lot. But even when we still look at it, it seems to still be, it seems to still pale in comparison to the single player collective effort. This is why within 5 years, PlayStation went nuts and just vomited the entire thing on here. That's why you saw it happen. If you thought that that was what made them slow down. So let me go ahead and now ask a logical question, or something I think is a logical question. While they were launching these initial titles, right? Let's just look at these guys. What were their sales at that time, and how did it actually pan out, and what was the resulting action from PlayStation? Were the sales really good for Days Gone at first? What did they realize? Why did they go ahead and try and add God of War? When they got to God of War, why didn't they go, it's not even worth it? They then went ahead and added Spider-Man Remastered. Why didn't they go ahead and say, it's not worth it? And then instead, what they did was the opposite. They added Uncharted Lost Legacy of Thieves, October 19, 2022. Then they said, maybe it's not worth it. Then they added Sackboy. Then they said, maybe it's not worth it. Then they added Spider-Man Miles Morales. Then they said, maybe it's not worth it. Then they added Returnal. Then they said, maybe it's not worth it. Then they went with The Last of Us Part 1. And they were like, it might not be worth it. Then they added Ratchet and Clank. And they went, it might not be worth it. Let's forget the live service game. And then he added Horizon Forbidden West. And they said, it might not be worth it. Then he added Ghost. So all this while, they were going, it's not worth it. But go ahead and port it, Nixus. Bro, help us out. Help us out. You said, in contrast, man, PlayStation's narrative-driven premium single-player tentpole titles exist primarily to strengthen the console. Y'all aren't buying enough copies. If you guys, and so let me go ahead and give you the equation now, Gaming Ledger. For those of you who love to strengthen the console ecosystem, there's a deficit on average per title. And that deficit is what the Steam gamers are actually making up for PlayStation, or at least PlayStation thinks it's or thought it satisfactory that these console gamers were making up that deficit. That's why Shuhei Yoshida said putting these games on PC is like printing money. So let me go ahead and give you PlayStation guys the playbook. If you guys really want to see PlayStation actually stop this PC thing, on average, per title, y'all need to buy at least another 1 to 2 million copies of these games per title extra. So those of you that are on Twitter, you first need to actually show us that you're about that life. You need to buy at least 3 copies. Gift them away. Give one to your nephew. Give one to your, to somebody that you think doesn't like PlayStation, right? So that they can experience this greatness. And then you buy one for yourself. So $180 might be required of you to actually have us see this mathematical reality come into play. Else, PlayStation will take it to PC. It's a simple equation. You can't run away from it. Because apparently there is a deficit. So if you're saying they're going to leave, then you all on PlayStation actually have to put up to the tune of $1 billion. And honestly, you don't have to do too much because now PlayStation won't be selling it at a 30%, decrease in terms of revenue. It'll be full revenue on PlayStation. So y'all can just maybe buy like a copy or, 2 copies at launch. Or maybe, if you want to be really conservative, 1 copy full price and then a second copy on sale. You said drive sales to strengthen the hardware ecosystem. Yeah, it's nonsense. Like the hardware ecosystem is not strengthened by money. Where is it? Drive hardware sales, retain subscribers, and most importantly, is a brand differentiator. Well, I guess it ain't differentiating the brand no more. Combining these 2 categories to produce a single big number is analytically misleading. Interesting. Okay, but I already gave you without them, and you still saw that it's actually still lucrative without the live service games. I guess that's why MLB The Show studio is looking for somebody to help them with a PC AAA game. The revenue figure itself is also being misinterpreted. $1.2 billion sounds substantial, but in context, it represents only a few percent of PlayStation's annual software business. It also spread across multiple years of releases, all while Steam takes a 30% cut. Okay. PlayStation didn't know that when they went into it. More importantly, PC players contribute almost nothing to Sony's broader ecosystem if they don't buy PS5 hardware. They don't subscribe to PlayStation Plus. They don't purchase DLC through the PS Store. They don't buy accessories. And they don't increase Sony's monthly active user metrics. They buy the game once and exit the ecosystem entirely. That's fundamentally lower lifetime value than a typical PlayStation console user. The Gaming Ledger, how about if they don't even buy the software? That would be way worse than even buying the game, for instance. And again, I predicted y'all would do this. That you would do this nonsense. 30% is greater than 70% crap. I already saw y'all from 20 miles away. Because everybody on earth knows, right? That $49.99, this is the price of a, former exclusive game, is greater than 0. Everybody knows that $49.99 is greater than no dollars and no cents. So all this talk about, well, they don't provide lifetime value. My guy, if they give only $49.99 to PlayStation, it is greater lifetime value than $0. Are you getting it? Do you understand me? I'm just trying to make sense of what in the world is going on here from a mathematical perspective. It's very challenging to go ahead and track this thing. You said, and the analysis also ignores 2 critical factors. Oh, here we go. Cannibalization and opportunity cost. Whoops. Hold on. Opportunity cost. Economic term. Okay. I want to hear exactly what opportunity cost has to do with this because I'm interested. You said, even with multi-year delays, PC ports create behavioral leakage. Oh my gosh. Where does this guy's AI module get this stuff from? What is behavioral leakage? Okay. More players wait for the PC version. Fewer late cycle PS5 units are sold, and system selling franchises lose urgency. Hold up. Is PlayStation not making the most amount of revenue? Blah, 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 generation. Are the consoles not shipping blah, 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 more than Xbox and blah, 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 blah? Even though they've been doing this for many years, judging by the fact that many players are sticking with their library. And both PlayStation and Xbox know this. When Phil Spencer came out and said, we lost the generation that shouldn't have been lost. People are sticking with their libraries. He was mocked. Oh, you think PlayStation doesn't know that? Show me many PlayStation players that are going to be running over to go get a PC at this moment in time. Not many. Not many. It would be an addition more than anything else. They're not abandoning, or what kind of leakage are you talking about? Not many of them are. Some of us did. I did. But it wasn't like, for instance, let me even give you a crazy, situation. I leave, I go get I get a PC. I'm playing the Division 1 on PC. Not a single person leaves with me from the PS4. Not a single person. The biggest Division clan that I actually play and, play the Division with and run with exists on PlayStation, and everybody is still on there. They don't care whether I play on PC or not. They just send me a message and say, VJ, get your hiney into this Discord server and let's run a raid. And I'm like, yes, sir. And I'd log in with my PlayStation. Boom. And I just play. They didn't run to PC. They didn't abandon their library and throw it away and be like, get out. No, they didn't do it. It doesn't affect many real gamers where games go. It's only in the fabric of this particular console warrior paradigm that it's actually, in some sense, effective. These ideas, to be honest, are low-hanging fruit. I'm just playing around, guys. I could have stopped this video at any given time because of all the holes in everything that you've been saying so far. But I'm going to stick with it. You said, meanwhile, every PC port demands engineering bandwidth, QA support, and oversight that could have been spent accelerating PlayStation-led development or refining PS5/PS6 first-party content. PC profits aren't something they get for free. Okay. Now, many of you remember that there was actually a document of some kind that actually came out and showed that all the ports that they had done on PC cost them about $11 million. That's one piece. Secondly, they have a studio that they've acquired whose job is to actually make these ports. Apparently, on paper, making the ports is actually low-impact labor, number one. Number two, higher ROI because the game has already been sold and has already usually made its money before it goes to PC. Thereby, its ROI from a percentage perspective should be higher than the initial cost to actually make and market the game and then sell it to a limited audience who may or may not buy it. So what you've said is absolutely improbable based on the data and the numbers. This statement right here, bro, have you said anything that, you know what? You said Sony's competitive advantage since the PS3 has been rooted in premium, narrative-driven exclusives that define the platform and drive long-term hardware adoption. Don't let GameStop hear you. If he catches you with this thing, he is going to rip it apart into shreds. As that man he sits there with a collection of the games that launched on these platforms, and he will tell you that it's not necessarily PlayStation's games that did push these ecosystems. It was third-party games as well as money-added efforts. But again, I'll leave you in GameStop to argue that, or at least those who were on those platforms to argue, because again, even Sean Layden, I don't even need, you know what, GameStop, you sit on your, in your little, in your little castle, because man, you deserve your flowers. Sean Layden said in that interview with Destin that PlayStation could not have been able to do a lot of what it did with its own first-party IPs, that it had to work with third-party. Man, he said gas titles long before on PC. It's debatable because you can sell your own millions of users because they benefit from scale, but single-player exclusives do not. My guy, they bring in green. You have to understand that the common denominator is not necessarily just the player, but the green. Once you get this down, you won't need to write all this. I've been telling all of you on Play, you've been saying it's got all this nuance. Every single one of you that I talk to, I say anything, you say there's nuance. Oh, it's a lot of nuance. It's a lot. I told you GTA 6 needs a bigger, platform for launch. Oh, you all said it was nuance. Now they're delaying the game. If they bring that game out on PC day one, you said treating both categories as equal revenue events misses the entire point of platform economics. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's you PlayStation guys that sit there and dictate what PlayStation should be doing. The PlayStation business similar to Nintendo. Really? Similar? Here we go again. Show me Nintendo's 24 games on Steam. Can you? Can you show me Nintendo's live service game on Xbox? Similar? Similar. Like it's almost 40 points off per game and IP and importance and sequel and type of game and style of game. Similar? Huh. It's built on ecosystem strength, retention, and high-value consumers, not one-off transactions on third-party storefronts. But PlayStation has netted about $1 billion gross on Steam. And ladies and gentlemen, you all were talking about Steam, but you all forgot that PlayStation not only has games on Steam, so-called one-off transactions, and Analytics only pointed you to Steam, you forget that there is another hidden player in the game. Oh, you really did think that that tunnel vision framework that many of you actually who play on console use applies to PC. Sorry to disappoint you. Sorry to disappoint you. Or actually, not sorry to disappoint you, because let's be real. The goal here is to actually show that if many of you are actually saying all this stuff, it's going to be very hard for most of you to pretty much go ahead and, in a sense, maybe not be shocked or maybe ignore that these PlayStation games also exist on the good old games. And Epic Games. Actually, they do exist on good old games. I thought I made a mistake there. Hold on. There's a PlayStation sale going on good old games right now. Right here. You see that? PlayStation games on good old games. And PlayStation games on Epic Games. So you've not paid attention to these other proxies. And I think this is why your missive is missing a lot. It's got a lot of holes in it. And I've warned, for the most part, that you need to look at the industry with wider lenses and not be tunnel visioned into the paradigm of the console war. You said Sony's leadership already seems to recognize this. No, they do not. They don't. You're trying to make stuff up now. You said PC was quietly removed from the company's strategic pillars. That is the biggest propaganda that you guys actually tried to spread. It was almost effective, though, for a minute, right? That they removed it from their own little KPI, whatever. That's nonsense, okay? Because the moment they removed it from their so-called KPI, they launched a game, or they had announced games that were going to be launched. And not only that, they still have games that are coming, like Marathon. If Fair Games has not been canceled, it will more than likely launch on PC. And so the money that you're claiming that they make via these live service game efforts, which on average is lower than, so far anyways, than the single player collective when we actually average it. I mean, do you really think they're going to take that and then not take a bigger piece of the pie? You're joking. You're joking. You're joking. And recent statements from hosts specific about conservative approach to tempo titles. Conservative, he said thoughtful. He didn't say conservative. The exact word he used was thoughtful. And after he used those words, Helldivers 2 was launched on Xbox, which I will show you in the fireside chat. Approach to tempo titles, they have renewed focus on PlayStation console with their marketing. Even their new monitor is spec'd out to be console friendly, as if they want to put the console next to your work PC. What? What? But the Bluetooth speakers that they released was PC friendly. You said the data doesn't argue for expanding single-player tempo ports to PC as much as it argues for slowing them down. All right, bet on it. I'll end this video. I know it's a longer video. The Gaming Ledger. Bet on your conclusion. What would you wager? These guys, you know, y'all talk too much. Just put some money on it or something. You know, gentleman's wager. Just bet on your conclusion. What would you wager? Let's see if you actually can put your money where your mouth is. I'll be happy to oblige. Thanks for watching. Peace out.